too heavy, it's underpowered, and it keeps getting stuck.
Is this really the harsh truth about the British Challenger 2? Well, these are just clips from a Ukrainian training ground where tank crews were testing their machines in extreme conditions. Some experts argue that the Challenger 2 falls behind other Western tanks, ranking only 5th on the list. But when it comes to comfort, it leaves the competition in the dust. After all, how many tanks do you know that come with a built-in coffee maker and even a toilet? Yes, there's an electric kettle and a multi-cooker. Our loader can not only make us coffee, but also heat up food. There's also a supply of drinking water, storage for rations, and even a toilet. The toilet in the Challenger 2 isn't just a quirky addition from British engineers trying to make a tank feel a little more homey. It actually has a very practical purpose. You see, the Challenger 2 was designed at the end of the Cold War, when the main threat was nuclear weapons. In the event of a nuclear strike, the crew had to remain inside for up to 3 days without stepping outside. And not just because it was cold out. Soviet tanks could take advantage of the chaos and break through defenses. So the tank's toilet wasn't about luxury, but about survival. Along with radiation protection systems, it was part of ensuring the crew could stay operational. And of course, it's a nice perk for long missions far from base, in case the war really did reach the heart of Europe. You could technically live inside it, not very comfortably, but you could. By the way, earlier British tanks like the Chieftain and Challenger 1 also had toilets. Rumor has it that Russia's new Armada tanks have them too, but that's according to Russian media. And well, you know what that looks like. In Ukraine, the only unit operating Challenger 2s is the 82nd Air Assault Brigade. Alongside 14 British tanks, these paratroopers also received 40 Marder IFVs, nearly 100 Striker APCs, and 24 M119 howitzers. These are experienced fighters, and their tank crews already had familiarity with Soviet T-series tanks. A Challenger 2 crew consists of 4 members: the commander, driver, gunner, and loader. The loader's workspace? A tiny triangle where he either stands or sits. At first glance, it seems like the loader, who also moonlights as a barista, has the best gig of all. After all, there's an old army rule: stay close to the kitchen and far from command. Smash that like button if you think that's the first thing every soldier should learn before taking the oath. But comfort isn't the only thing about the Challenger 2 that impressed Ukrainian tankers. After training, the brigade went straight into battle, taking part in Ukraine's 2023 counteroffensive in the south. That's where the first loss occurred. According to one version, a Ukrainian Challenger 2 was immobilized by a mine, or even 2, since double-stacked mines are commonly used in this war. After that, it was finished off by kamikaze drones. My colleague, who was operating this machine, hit a mine, but the tank took the TM mine just fine. Most likely, they're talking about the TM-62, a class of Soviet-era anti-tank mines with a pressure fuse. It contains anywhere from 15 to 24 pounds of explosives. Here's what it looks like when it detonates. Pretty intense, but not necessarily enough to breach the armor of a British tank. What it can do is wreck the tracks. Another version suggests that the Challenger 2 came under heavy Russian artillery fire. Either way, this marked the first combat loss of a Challenger 2 in history, but the crew managed to escape before the ammo detonated and survived, thanks to the tank's smart internal layout. For safety, the ammo and propellant charges are stored separately in containers. There was a fire in this tank, but the crew made it out because everything is kept apart. And while Ukraine's 2023 counteroffensive didn't deliver the expected breakthrough, less than a year later, Ukraine pulled off a stunning operation, this time inside Russia's Kursk region. Before that, Ukrainian tank crews trained hard, practicing tactics for breaching Russian fortifications and maneuvering through Dragon's Teeth. Then the moment of truth arrived. It was morning, but already light out. We were approaching the border, and the tanks were covering us. Geolocation data from footage confirms that in the first 24 hours of the Kursk operation, Ukrainian armored units advanced 6 to 7 miles deep into Russian territory. Another 100 meters, then hide. This wasn't a walk in the park. Every single mile of Russian territory was fortified. If you want to dive deeper into the Kursk operation, check out our full breakdown on the channel. The last time British tanks fought in these areas was back in 1919, when the British government sent around 60 Mark V tanks to support anti-Bolshevik forces. 5 of them are still around today, and they're in Ukraine. Look at the size of these things. But in reality, the Mark V is just a lanky teenager compared to the Challenger 2, which measures 27 feet 3 inches in length and 11 feet 6 inches in width. Its height, around 9.7 feet. Even next to modern tanks, this thing is a giant. The Challenger 2 is classified as a heavy tank. It weighs 64 tons without additional armor. With extra protection, that number jumps to 78 tons. Yep, Challenger 2 is one of NATO's heaviest tanks. Its turret and hull are covered in second-generation Chobham armor, known as Dorchester. The specifics of its composition are classified, but we do know it's a multi-layered mix of armored steel, ceramics, composite plastics, and Kevlar. This armor works against both heat rounds, which pierce armor with a concentrated jet, and APFSDS shells. In fact, there's a recorded case of a Challenger 2 taking 15 direct hits from ATGMs, without the armor being penetrated. On top of that, reactive armor modules, row more, can be installed on the turret, hull sides, and lower front plate. With those attached, its width increases to over 13 feet. At this point, you might be wondering, can this beast even move? Good question. Challenger 2's Perkins engine is the weakest among NATO tanks. 1,200 horsepower compared to 1,500 horsepower in the Abrams and Leopard 2, both of which are lighter. That makes it slower. It maxes out at 37 miles per hour on roads and 25 miles per hour off-road. But the lack of power really shows in rough terrain. Its ground pressure isn't much different from the Abrams or Leopard 2, but when it gets stuck in situations those tanks could power through, the Perkins engine just doesn't cut it. That said, it has a solid operational range of 280 to 340 miles, meaning it can go the distance. And as for driving it, not as hard as you think. The driver operates the tank while practically lying down. It's got an automatic gearbox, 2 pedals like a car, and 2 levers. Just switch it on and go. Super simple. But surviving in battle isn't just about armor. Maneuverability is key. Along with 6 forward gears, the Challenger 2 has 2 reverse gears. However, the manufacturer never mentions its actual reverse speed. That's why we make these videos, to find out what they don't tell you. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. Now, let's get to it. It moves in reverse much faster than Soviet tanks. You roll in, fire, and back out fast. And now, for the exact speed, 15.5 miles per hour in reverse. You'll see how we figured that out soon. That means Challenger 2 can quickly retreat from a firing position without turning around, reducing the risk of return fire. To make things even tougher for the enemy, it can deploy a smoke screen from 10 launchers mounted along the sides of its main gun. Compared to the T-80BV I used before, the stabilization and optics here are on another level. The gun controls are handled with the right thumb on a button panel that looks like something from an old-school gaming console. The turret rotates a full 360 degrees in just 9 seconds, allowing the tank to fire in different directions while still moving. Constant forward-reverse movement makes it incredibly difficult for enemy ATGMs or tank gunners to land a direct hit. Meanwhile, Challenger 2 remains deadly accurate. The thermal sights here are insane. We can spot vehicle exhaust from about a mile away and tell if it's a truck or a tank. We even see rabbits in the forest. By the way, the driver has a rear-view thermal camera to avoid getting lost in the chaos. While he's maneuvering, the commander is already identifying the next target, and the gunner is waiting for the smoke to clear. The commander, positioned above the gunner, has a fully stabilized panoramic sight with a laser rangefinder, an independent targeting system, and full backup gun controls. From the moment of firing to when the smoke clears and the gunner can see through the sights again, less than a second passes. On Soviet tanks, it takes about 5 seconds. That's why the aim-fire hit cycle only takes about 8 seconds. And while Challenger 2 uses manual loading, the loader earns his comfortable seat next to the coffee maker by keeping up with the fast-paced action. A well-trained crew with an experienced loader can take out up to 7 targets per minute. And not just fire off rounds, actually hit targets. The key to this accuracy? A rifled barrel. Unlike smoothbore tank guns, Challenger 2's 120mm gun has spiral grooves inside the barrel, making the round spin for better stability and higher accuracy. In fact, Challenger 2 is the only modern tank with a rifled gun, and it's considered one of the most precise tanks in the world. This 120mm rifled gun is insanely accurate, but also delicate. You need to service it regularly and calibrate the sights, but if you do, it lands shots from over 3 miles away with no problem. Actually, the L30A1 gun, measuring 55 calibers in length, can hit targets up to 5 miles away. That's a solid 8 kilometers when firing Hesh rounds. These high-explosive squash head shells were once considered the go-to weapon for taking on Soviet tanks. When they hit a target, they first flatten like a cow pie against the surface, then detonate, causing shockwaves and fragments on the opposite side. That makes HESH rounds great, not only for taking out tanks and vehicles, but also for smashing through concrete fortifications. But Challenger 2 was designed for tank combat, so it's not equipped for dealing with enemy infantry. There's no fragmentation or shrapnel shell in its arsenal, and you can't just grab one off the shelf, because its gun is rifled. That means it can't fire standard NATO rounds. Tough luck. However, Challenger 2 isn't completely helpless against infantry. Do you know of any machine gun in the world that can fire continuously for 20 minutes at 500 rounds per minute? Well, here it is, the only one of its kind. Meet the L94A1, chain gun, mounted to the left of the main cannon. For some reason, when people praise the British gun, they forget about this beast. And that's a shame, because this is an engineering masterpiece. Its secret weapon? A cooling system that sucks in cold air while also acting as a smoke extractor. It's meant for close quarters combat, though it's unclear if it has really proven itself in this war yet. So yeah, the lack of infantry fighting rounds is a big downside for Challenger 2's super accurate gun. But there's another issue. Its rifled barrel wears out faster than a smoothbore, meaning it needs to be replaced more often. And the UK has stopped making tank barrels. Not only that, they've stopped producing barrels for any artillery at all. And now, for the final headshot, the UK has completely shut down its only tank factory. No, this isn't a joke. The reason? The next-gen Challenger 3 will use a smoothbore Rheinmetall RH-120 gun. Yep, the same one on the Abrams and Leopard tanks. In fact, Germany's Rheinmetall will handle a big chunk of the work upgrading Challenger 2 into Challenger 3. At first glance, Challenger 3 is basically just a Challenger 2 with a German gun. Same armor, same chassis, same 1,200 horsepower Perkins engine, and the same 6-speed transmission, plus 2 reverse gears. And how do we know Challenger 2's reverse speed is 15.5 miles per hour? Because that's exactly what's listed for Challenger 3. So yeah, Challenger 3 is really just a heavier, slower version of its predecessor, but with a German cannon that's 800 pounds lighter. Hell of a ride. I love it. But honestly, does that even count as a new tank? Drop your thoughts in the comments. What should Challenger 3 have besides a new gun? An autoloader instead of a minibar and toilet? A different engine and transmission? A built-in shower? Or maybe you've got a better idea. Let us know.